time kills all deals. Right? So it's an age-old saying, but it's true. And time doesn't equal, if 2 or 3 weeks goes by, time can equal days.
Yeah.
Like, look, there's back to your comment around urgency. That company or person, they may need to make a decision that week, or at a minimum, submit in for budget or get something approved or turn to whoever their boss is and say, look, I recommend Rick's organization and Jim's organization. These are the two I want to move forward with. Well, if you're the third person in that conversation and you didn't follow up appropriately, you didn't engage them, you didn't form a relationship on a different level, back to that, how do you, making sure that you're covering on more than just one person, maybe that coach or that champion that you're dealing with,
right?
You're most likely going to lose.
All right. Hey, thanks. Welcome to the Future of Selling podcast. My name is Rick Smith, and I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Concur. So the Future of Selling podcast is all about looking at trends and challenges and innovations in the sales industry and talking about those and trying to educate our audience. As I said, I'm with Concur. Concur is a sales communications platform. We live right inside of Salesforce, and we work with some of the largest enterprise companies in the world. Me personally, I've been in and around sales most of my career as a CEO and a COO and a Chief Revenue Officer, and now again Chief Customer Officer here at Concur. So thanks for being with us. But enough about me. I want to talk about our guest today. I am so pumped to have on our podcast today Jim Trimarco. Now you're going to hear me refer to Jim as JT because that's just who he is to me, and that's who he is to everybody else. But it's Jim Trimarco, right? So JT. So JT is an accomplished sales leader. He's got over 2 decades of experience in driving growth, innovation, and excellence in SaaS companies, and whether really large enterprise companies with thousands and thousands of employees, or all the way down to really small kind of startups as well. So JT's the real deal when I talk about a sales leader, right? So I am just so pumped to have him on with us today. Again, he's worked with companies like an ADP. He's also worked with, other companies like Harvard and smaller companies like Simply Well. So, and man, I'm just so glad that he is working now with us at Concur. So JT, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being on today.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. And those are great words of early encouragement here. So I appreciate all the accolades and all the excitement early. So this is great. Right. Thanks for having me.
The plan is to keep you encouraged. That's what we're going to do, right? But we're also going to cover some really good topics as well, or at least I think they're really strong. So, but before we get going, just I always like to start these with a couple of fun facts. That way the audience, you're not just some name out there, but you're kind of, bring a little humanity to the whole thing. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First fun fact, I had no idea, and I've been out to eat with you multiple times. I did not know that you don't like fish. What is that whole story about?
Yeah, well, it's not a great story. It's just I'll start with, it's basically a life miss because I watch the excitement on other people's faces when they're out to a great meal at a seafood restaurant. If they put a lobster bib on, or if they saw sushi come out, it's so exciting and it's such an experience. And I think it's probably just something where my parents really didn't, we didn't have fish in the house. And so it's probably a texture, something to the experience. But I miss it. I miss the idea of, that as being part of a diet, just because for all the health reasons.
Right.
It's something that's passed me by, and I don't think I'm going to catch up with it.
Well, my wife doesn't like fish either, so you guys would get along great. But I'm going to try to guide all of our out to eat dinners from now on to restaurants that serve a lot of fish. So
that's why we're friends. Yeah, that's how that should go. That's right.
But that's my goal. That's exactly right. All right, that's fun fact number 1. Fun fact number 2, early on in COVID, you were one of 7 people on a flight to Europe. There were more like airline employees on the flight than there were passengers on the flight. So I assume that had to be a pretty unique kind of situation, right?
It was a different experience. I mean, I've always loved the idea of global connections, and as your career gets moving, you never know if are you going to be involved just in operating in your backyard or in whatever state that you're in. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to, lead global teams and, have some, pretty real travel to some pretty cool places like the Netherlands, like, the UK, India, Singapore, Australia, and now even in Kosovo. And early in COVID, I mean, there was literally 7 people. I think there were 12 people working on the flight,
right?
Which was kind of cool and scary at the same time.
It's awesome. All right. Fun fact number 3: you are a fitness and foodie lover. You love fitness. You're up at 5 a.m. That's almost the same time I'm up, but not, I'm just saying. So anyway, up at 5 a.m. every day doing some sort of workout. And then you love going to new restaurants. I'm trying to get you more into barbecue and smoking and all that. But anyway, it's all good. It's all good. You got to be you. So
yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've been getting up that early, probably for 20 years now.
Yeah.
And just gives you energy, gets the day started off right, helps obviously back on all the health stuff and helps check your weight and cholesterol and all those fun numbers. But you need to balance it. You need to be able to do all those things so you can, have fun eating out. And I love barbecue, as you know. I'm not exactly going to spend all the time cooking it, but I will pay for it. And, but I love watching, others and friends, the enjoyment, of them, staying up all night cooking it, but I'll leave it to them.
Got it. All right. Well, there's you. So there's our 3 fun facts. Now you are a human. So we know who you are, which is great. So, but let's jump into the topic today. Right. So, let me set it up like this. A few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, or a little bit more, you and I were in a conversation and with a couple of other people, and you made this statement. We've been working with a prospect, right, and getting pretty far along in the process, and you made this statement that we've run a really, really good process, really strong process, and when you said that, I kind of took it and wrote it in my mental, parking lot and set it aside. And we went on with the conversation, whatever, for that day. But the more and more I thought about it, I thought, I want to get JT on and talk about this, because this is something that affects any B2B sales organization, any B2B team, is the process that they're running. So that's kind of the tee up for it, and where this came from and why I was so excited about having you on. So, but a few questions, and I'll kind of let you take it from there. So when you think about running a great B2B sales process, what does that mean to you? When you say that, unpack that just a little bit. How do you define that, or what does it mean to you to run a good, strong B2B sales process?
I think it really starts with, it has to start with the customer in mind, right? So hands down, the biggest disappointment, for any buyer or anybody that's reviewing something that they're interested in, is when whoever the person is that's selling them is just dumping all of their materials, right? They're showing up. They're so excited to highlight all of their stuff and all the things it does, et cetera. But they don't spend the appropriate amount of time really figuring out, but what problem are we trying to solve? Like, how do I act as a partner? You hear this debate between, are you a vendor or are you a partner? And there's plenty of vendors out there that are just trying to sell something.
Yeah.
The partners are the ones that actually stop, spend the appropriate amount of time in some magic words like discovery, and then really think about, okay, can I partner early and then partner over a really long period of time to actually help the customer, and achieve something, and the company achieve something that they otherwise are either struggling with or they haven't been able to figure out on their own.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So, starts with the customer in mind, right? Focused on being a partner, not a vendor. If you took it one step further, and not just what does it mean, but what does it look like? From kind of step 1 to step 2. You don't have to go too deep, but go as deep as you want. But what does a good, strong B2B sales process look like? If I were kind of laying this out in a map, what has to be there?
Yeah, well, number 1, it starts with preparation, right? And really preparation, that starts before you even have your first call or you're engaging with somebody. So there's this, marketing, philosophy called ABM, account-based marketing, really, where your ultimately your organization is really working to share their information, highlight what they do, really get the word out, get their brand out, get awareness out. So at the point where you actually do engage with somebody, they already have a decent idea either of what you do specifically, or they have a pretty good idea of what they're looking for. Right. And whether you fit or not, that's a different, conversation. But the reality is the coolest technology out there actually sells itself.
Okay.
Right. That's probably less than 0.1% of companies and solutions out there. For the rest of us, you've got to really run that disciplined process, which is, I think, where this conversation started, is like, what does it mean if my stuff isn't that good that it will just sell itself and it jumps off the shelves? Then I've got to run a better process. And that really starts with marketing, preparation, making sure that the buyer has a pretty good understanding, who you are, and, even before they get on a call.
Got it. Okay, so starts up front, preparation. Buyer knows who you are before you get on the call. Let me ask you this: what led you to make that statement that day that, hey, we ran a really strong process? Because we were already pretty far, down the pipeline, down the process itself. So, what do you think? I mean, beyond just those initial stages, what does a great process look like from there? I mean, what happens?
Yeah, I made the statement because when we first engaged with this buyer, they actually told us, look, I've read your material. It fits what I'm looking for, I think. Now I really like to learn some more. So what they did was they really, gave us the opportunity to take, the conversation one of two ways. We could have either jumped in and just started presenting and saying, hey, look, here's all the great things that we do and why we think we're going to be a great fit. What we did, and really what our lead account executive did, they really took the time to just stop and really start getting deep around that discovery side, right? So they made discovery the foundation of the entire process. In discovery, look, that can take 15, 20 minutes. It could take an hour. It could actually be multiple calls, because oftentimes, if you and I are the first ones that are talking about something, and whether you're the decision maker or not the decision maker, there are other people that are also going to be involved in the process. So it's trying to figure out and learn from each of those different personalities. They could be part of a different business unit. They could have a different challenge or something that they're trying to solve. And the key to that discovery part of the section is really learning all of those things and then being able to come back later and tying it all together. Here's the things I heard. Here are the things that potentially we could help with. And also, and actually trying to present a teachable moment instead of just sharing all the different things that you do.
Tell me about the teachable moment. You and I have had these conversations about the dopamine moment, right? Is that the same thing? But or unpack the teachable moment. What are you trying to accomplish there?
Yeah, I think, look, the teachable moment. There's a great book, and I can't remember if you and I talked about this or not. But there's a great book called The Trusted Advisor. This came out, early 2000, and it talks about, basically people buy from people that they understand, they trust, but ultimately it's something that, they get taught something from them. So it also references the difference between a salesperson and a consultant, right? A salesperson's just trying to get something to the finish line.
Right.
The consultant's actually taking the time, handling some coaching, potentially handling a teachable moment, really trying to take them through a journey of, here's the things that I heard. Here's what, potentially you could, how you could solve those things. And then, by the way, it's at the end. And then here's the things my organization or our team or our consultants can actually contribute to whatever goals that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, you brought it up, so I can't help myself now, but I'm with you. I love the book, The Trust Equation, right? High reliability, high credibility, high intimacy, divided by kind of a low self-interest, right? So it's not all about me. So that's it. I think that's, you talked a minute ago about partner versus vendor. That's that partnering relationship, right? I'm building the credibility, the reliability, the intimacy, all those things are there. And it's just not about me trying to reach my end goal of close the deal, but it's actually it's about trying to bring value to the client and make sure that they're experiencing that. That's what I hear.
Yeah, it's well, and what ties together, I think, really well there also is every salesperson, every company is trying to figure out how to build a relationship at multiple levels with their whole, either prospective partners, and or if it's an existing customer. And so you really have to think about multi-threading, your sales process. And it's not enough just to say, look, I'm at the director level, or I'm even at the C level as part of an organization. You have to be connected really from the executive level down through the power user level, and make sure that everyone is heard, right? So, there's a pretty good stat out there, and I'll probably get it slightly wrong, but it talks about how buyers need to be emotionally connected to the process, and it gets a little squishy, when you start to talk about being emotionally connected to a sales process. But I think what it's saying is, and it's something like 50 or 52%. They have to feel like they're connected at that level, or they're just not going to be satisfied in the buying process.
Right.
You won't get to the finish line is what'll happen. You'll get 90% through presenting and talking and forming your relationship, et cetera. But if they're not connected to the process, they'll actually just go and buy from somebody that they feel like they've got a better or stronger connection to.
Okay, gotcha. So, my next question I wanted to ask you was kind of right along those lines is, how does running a great B2B sales process benefit? I mean, obviously, it would benefit us as a company running the process, right? But then, what are 2 or 3 or 4 things that, how does it benefit the buyer themselves? So one, that emotional engagement, I'm sure, is a net positive for them. What are the other things that come from that for the buyer themselves if you're running a really strong process?
Yeah, I'll tie it back to that teachable moment. I mean, the reality is, people come into a sales process and they most of the time know what they're trying to solve for. But I think the really exciting processes turn into, well, okay, you shared with me maybe how you're going to fix problem 1, 2, and 3 that I talked about.
Yeah.
But now through the process, you actually brought up problems 3, 4, and 5 that I wasn't maybe necessarily connecting or linking to this challenge. And sometimes that's because they didn't know that you had that product set, or they didn't know that something was integrated in a certain way as part of the solution. So again, back to that teachable moment, they're coming in and they're learning something new. What does that do? It teaches it, it builds credibility, it builds trust. It also builds a discipline, in the sales process, because, most times when somebody, especially at the enterprise level, when you're, in a full sales process, the reality is they're generally looking at 2, 3, maybe even more other companies that either do near the same thing that you do. Everybody's trying to differentiate and trying to figure out and showcase why their stuff's different.
Right.
But for argument's sake, if you're one of 3 or 4 and you all do something similar, although it's nuanced to your individual company, if you're the person that builds credibility, you're the person that builds trust, you're the one that teaches them something different, you will end up shining at the end. And then oftentimes when people talk about, well, where does price come into this equation? Do you have to be the least expensive? Do you want to be in the middle? Or can you actually charge a premium for your service?
Right.
I can tell you this, if you're not the one that's teaching something, if you're not showcasing your solution and really tying it back to solving their problem, and you try to charge a premium, most of the time you're going to lose.
Yeah. Gotcha. Makes complete sense. So when I think about the kind of how you answered that, then, so, how is it good for the buyer? One, they've got that emotional connection, right? That trust is built there. But then also and that's key, right? That the buyer, me as a buyer, if you're teaching me something, then I may again be focused on 1, 2, and 3, but you show me 4, 5, and 6. So I come out of that with really a bigger picture understanding of how I'm going to improve whatever the issue is that I'm dealing with, right? Because I don't buy software just for the fun of it. I don't just say, oh, let's buy something. I mean, it's either going to create opportunity for me or it's solving a problem. Those are the only 2 reasons to do something like that. So you're giving me a more holistic point of view, and actually probably creating a stronger presence for me within my company I work in. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think one other point on that, Rick, you know, sales teams often run into trouble because they forget that selling's a team sport.
Yeah.
Right. So there's always someone that's out front. If you want to call them the quarterback, it's a little overplayed sometimes, but
Yeah.
that person's role and that person's job is to make sure they're bringing your organization, whoever that is, and your solution to life.
Yeah.
Yes, it's about features and benefits, right? But ultimately it's around like, what is the team that's going to be involved in delivering the right experience? And the team starts in the pre-sales process, right? So you can have multiple people that are involved there. Sometimes, that's a solution consultant or a sales engineer, someone that's helping more from the technical side of the selling.
Yeah.
Could be, some sales leader, or manager that's bringing a different executive, part of the relationship or talk track, et cetera. But this is also where I think the sales team has to remember it's generally a go-to-market team, right? So we've had a lot of conversations around what does go-to-market mean versus just sales? Well, go-to-market generally then includes your marketing team. It includes your customer success or your customer support team. And, why is that important? Because the customer, your prospective customer that you're trying to sell to also needs to have a pretty comfortable feeling around what's this going to feel like after I sign.
Right.
So I've agreed to give you my money.
Yeah.
I'm taking on your solution if you're in the technology space like we are.
Yeah.
Well, then does the selling end? Actually, the relationship is just beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And there's this ongoing selling or sales, and support process that now takes over. And the best enterprise sales process brings those personalities and brings that solution and brings that relationship in while you're still testing to see if this is going to be a good relationship moving forward. Because again, once they sign, the salesperson typically, they don't leave the equation, but they could move to the back seat.
Yep.
And then the rest of your go-to-market team starts to move to the front seat. And then the new process begins. And that's what's hopefully is going to take place for a very long period of time.
Yeah. So if if I'm running a good process, you guys are doing from an AE perspective or the sales team perspective, there's some real vision casting that's going on about, hey, this is what, not only are we going to be able to meet, whatever the solution is that you need, but this is what this is going to feel like in the future. This is the experience that you're going to have. And then if you're doing a really good job, you're probably including some of those personalities along the way. So really giving them the full picture of this, of that overall experience. So awesome.
Yep.
Okay, good deal. So we mentioned on the, when we started, you've been in sales and global sales and everything else for 20 plus years. What have you seen changes in the sales process in, say, the last 5 years? What does that look like? What have been some of the significant, or have there been any significant changes that that you see coming into an effective sales process?
Yeah, I think the biggest change, and this is, I don't know if it's in the last 5 years, maybe it's over the last 10 years, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think it's tying it back to the type of research and what the market knows before they even engage. In previous lives, all of our in a previous company, I should say, all of our sales process started really with an RFP.
Yeah.
Right. So
okay.
The company would send out a series of questions and they'd ask, somewhere between 3 and sometimes 10 different companies to fill out all the information, put all your data points down. What do you do? Answer this question. Some of them are yes, no.
Right.
Some of those are pretty detailed. They're looking for use case examples, et cetera. And then they narrow it down to say the top 2 or 3. You were the finalist, right? And you made it through to the next round. In our current world, there's not as many RFPs.
Okay.
Which tells you that, okay, the people are doing all their research ahead of time.
Yep.
Doesn't mean they're not going to ask you all the questions and have you explain how you're going to do things. But the reality is 85%, of the buying process happens before you're even talking to somebody. So back to that, how is the company thinking about ensuring that there's proper marketing? You're addressing the problems, specific to your ICP, and it's really targeted because, why is that important? because they're doing all their research ahead of time. By the time they get into this conversation, of course, yes, you're going to put your, slideware up there in your deck, and you're going to get into a demo experience. But they probably have a pretty good understanding of what they're looking for already. And so therefore the question and answer period and that coaching and teaching, that teaching moment should be very targeted.
Right. Okay. Got it. So yeah, that makes perfect sense, because you've just got, you've got less opportunity to make an impact, right? Because if they've actually done 85% of the research, if that's the number ahead of time, then you've really got 15% left. And so it's not, you've got to be extremely articulate and extremely clear and be able to be able to talk about your, how you deliver value. So what are some of the most common mistakes you've seen B2B sales teams make in trying to run their process? What are the top three? Where do they fall down? Where do they make the mistakes?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake, and it sounds like a simple one, and if you bump into any enterprise technologies, however, they'll tell you that they do this, but the majority of them do not, which is, before you leave your existing conversation, and sometimes that conversation's on an email, or if sometimes it's on a live call, or sometimes it's on a Zoom meeting like this, you have to make sure that you're setting up your next step.
Okay.
Right. And there has to be actionable takeaways. Sometimes the takeaways or the actions are, the customer owes those actions. Hey, Rick, we talked about these 2 or 3 things, and we talked about, these data points. That would be really helpful if you can provide more specifics there. Why is that important? Because we're going to then take that and build that through our model, and then be able to present back exactly how our solution can help you. Right. So just, kind of mock examples. Sometimes the customer is the one that actually has to provide the information, and what does that do? It keeps them engaged,
right,
in the process, right. Oftentimes it's on the actual company or the seller side, right. So they're in every call, everyone's not going to have every answer.
Yeah,
there's going to be things where I just don't have that information. Went deeper than my technical expertise. I need to talk to this person or that person, or I have to go do some research.
Right.
Well, that provides an opportunity to come back to the conversation and then present that information. So, I can't leave the call. If it's, Tuesday, at 9:30 in the morning, well, okay, can we jump back on, tomorrow afternoon at 2:00 as an example? Right. Well, no, that's not going to work for me. Well, how's Friday at either 9:30 or at 10 a.m.?
Yeah.
Right. So making sure that next step is set, because if not, the conversation, most likely it'll just float away.
Yeah.
Somebody else will swoop in and do a better job at their follow-up process, and therefore keeping the customer engaged.
Got it. Okay. So and you didn't use this word, but I'm a big believer in this, right? Is just the urgency piece. Because, clear next steps, clear takeaways, clear things like that, but also clearly not delivered 3 weeks from now. Let's get back together tomorrow. Let's get back together Friday. Let's, Monday of next week, to create that little bit of positive tension that, oh my gosh, this is important. We can't let this get away from us.
Yeah. And Rick, you're saying it in the right polished way, but I'll say it in the soapbox way that happens oftentimes in the field. And the statement is, time kills all deals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's an age old saying, but it's true. And time doesn't equal, if 2 or 3 weeks goes by, time can equal days.
Yeah.
Like, look, there's back to your comment around urgency. That company or person, they may need to make a decision that week, or at a minimum, submit in for budget or get something approved, or turn to whoever their boss is and say, look, I recommend Rick's organization and Jim's organization. These are the 2 I want to move forward with. Well, if you're the third person in that conversation and you didn't follow up appropriately, you didn't engage them, you didn't form a relationship on a different level, back to that, how do you making sure that you're covering on more than just one person, maybe that coach or that champion that you're dealing with,
right?
You're most likely going to lose.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. I've seen that before, where it goes back, like I said, time kills all deals, right? Where we just didn't feel like we were I don't know. We'll get back together in 6 weeks from now. That seems like just like a nail in the coffin. I mean, either that.
Wait, you've wasted your time at that point. You probably wasted their time. That's why they're telling you they'll talk to you in 6 weeks.
Probably, probably true. Probably true. How have you coached to that with your team now or your teams in the past? How do you coach to that next step? Mentality, that urgency mentality.
Well, the coaching needs to take place obviously before, you even get on that call, and it's making sure you're working with your AEs, or if it's your more of your, SDR, tip of spear and BDR type team. And it's making sure that there is some type of, selling philosophy.
Right.
That's really trained, and educated throughout your sales team. And there's lots of good ones, right? So I've been fortunate over the years to be involved, in a number of different selling philosophies. Something like, spin selling is a great one out there, where you're really focused on, the situation, the problem, what's the implication, what's the need,
right?
How do you deliver that back? Challenger sales, a great one. Force management, each of these, are good in their own right.
Right.
What you really have to do is make sure you're picking the right one that applies to your specific business, your specific market, but then all of them, we'll make sure that they highlight, no matter what happens in the conversation, you're trying to set up your next conversation, you're trying to set up your next person to make sure that we have something on the calendar, and that both parties are coming to the middle. If you don't do that, again, things just take too much time, and then all of a sudden, nobody's responding anymore, and that means you lose.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So name of the podcast is Future of Selling, right? So if we look ahead next, probably not 5 years, probably next 12 months, because everything is changing so fast. The onset of AI, it's been here a while now, right? But it's continues to change things. Data analytics, all the things that we do now, right? What do you see maybe changing in the B2B sales process over the next 12 months, 24, 3 years, whatever it may be? What are you seeing that we need to be thinking about?
Well, I'm glad you brought up AI, right? So you can't really, I think, have any conversation, read anything, and not have AI now be a part of, every person's life. That's both on the professional side, and it's on the personal side as well. I think, any organization or any go-to-market team that's really not already working on how do they implement AI as part of their process, they've probably already lost. They're probably getting lapped by the competition because other teams are already working on this and thinking about it. And, at this point, even, our go-to-market team, every single morning, every single day, they've already started layering in AI, not just in our technology, and it is part of our, solution set and our technology suite, but simple things like how's an email crafted?
Right.
What are the takeaways? I mentioned, force management before, and the entire philosophy around force management is really thinking about the PBO, right? The positive business outcomes that the customer is going to care about.
Yeah.
You have a problem, customer or company. How are you trying to solve that problem? And then what's the outcome if you did solve it? Right. That's at the company level. And then it can be down into, the power user level as well. Okay. And then there's a way that philosophy teaches you, on how you communicate to the customer. It's how you communicate within, your sales deck and your presentation, the language that you use, but then all the way down to, how do you follow up with emails? How do you follow up when they asked you 3 questions, you didn't have the answer, and then you send them some information later? You could just send them the answer to those 3 questions.
Yeah.
Or you could use AI, and with just a couple of simple prompts and say, build this in, as force management would respond. Right. So the question was this. Yeah. This is our answer. Now build it into this format that delivers the message in a way that hopefully the person on the other end goes, boy, they did listen.
Yeah.
They did listen. They gave me the answer. They gave me some data points that are going to support that.
Yeah.
I like how they run their sales process. That all ties back to that. Am I running something as efficiently as I possibly can in an enterprise setting.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. As we look ahead then, next 12 months, 24, 36 months, right? The key from your standpoint would be, look, AI is here. AI is making a difference. If you're not using it, if as a team you're not leaning into this already, then you're either getting lapped or you need to get in now, right? You're getting beat by other teams, or you need to get in now and figure this thing out and how to make the most of it, while probably at the same time still being human, right? People like to buy from humans, goes back to the whole trust equation, trusted advisor, that whole thing. But how do you use, how do you utilize AI in your kind of daily workflow?
Nobody, I think, wants their homework anymore, but that's your night homework for every seller and every sales leader out there.
Yeah.
You have to spend some time post working hours to really figure out how are you going to layer that into your process. The magic words: becoming more efficient, becoming more productive. How do you get to that point? AI is going to help you do those things.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So last question. I know you got to go. I know you got to run. So I want to let you get back to kind of business here. But I always like to end the podcast with a few key takeaways, right, from the discussion. If somebody's listening to this, and so great discussion. Love JT. Love Rick. I hope. But what do I take away from this really good discussion we've had? And here's the way I wanted to think about it. I'm a new sales leader, right? A fairly new sales leader. And I've come into a team. I'm the new sales leader for that team. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, something doesn't seem right. I want to improve the process. I want to put in place, just like you said, we ran a really strong process. If I'm that sales leader and I'm fairly new to the game and I'm trying to make an impact, what are the key takeaways from your perspective? The 3 to, could be as many as 5 you want, but what are the key takeaways? What would you recommend to that person?
If you want to win in enterprise sales, I would focus on 3 things. Number 1, make sure you're prepared. Preparation is going to win. You have to do your homework before that first call. The customer's doing their homework. You have to also make sure you're doing your homework. So using things like and partnering, with your marketing team around ABM and research, making sure you can understand who the customer is and how then can you or your company do something better than all the others.
Okay.
And if you're struggling figuring that out or thinking about your differentiators, you have more work to do as a company, because every company does have something that is better or different. Right. You have to make sure you're bringing that to life in the conversation. So preparation is number 1. Number 2 then is the focus on discovery. I would argue discovery is everything. Back to that spin selling, approach. If you're using thoughtful questions to uncover the customer's real needs, and then you're working on aligning that to whatever the value is, right? And whatever the solution is that you bring to the table. You can't do that the other way around. Yeah. The challenge with, failed AEs, people that have just, they've made a career in sales, except they've never really gone anywhere with it, is that they do it the other way around.
Right.
They're very good at messaging. They're very good at communicating, some of them.
Yeah.
But they're starting with themselves first, not spending the appropriate amount of time in discovery and really learning, from the customer. So I think that's the second thing. And then the third thing, this is now enterprise selling. So if you're in a more transactional sales environment, this one might not apply as much. But execution and presenting and winning a customer and then winning a long-term partnership, that's a team sport.
Got it.
Right. So in order to build that, become that true trusted advisor, you've got to focus, on the relationship at multiple levels, but you're doing it from a team standpoint. So it's thinking about your own leadership. It's thinking about your, the other people on your team, whether that's someone else within go-to-market, someone else on the technical side, someone on the engineering side. There are other people that you will need in order to bring your company, your solution, to life, to really make sure that you can close that deal.
Got it. Okay. So top 3 takeaways. You want to make a difference. You want to run an enterprise sales process. Preparation is key. Number 1. Second, focus on the discovery. Discovery is everything. Making sure that you can align your product and the value you bring with their actual needs so that you can make a difference and make an impact on their experience, their environment, whatever they're trying to accomplish. And then lastly, I love this because you're really good at this one, and you're good at all of them, right? But the team sport, right? You bring that up a lot, right? This is a team sport, and I love that about you. And so that's kind of the third key. If I'm a new sales leader, those are the three things I should be thinking about.
That's it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time today. I know you're a busy man, but thanks for being on the podcast today. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Rick. A lot of fun.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Talk to you later.